And I just remember the doctor's eyes when he was telling me, they were just filled with doubt.
All right, good folks. Welcome to the Speaking for Profit podcast. My name is Evolve Benton, and today's conversation is going to be all about how to really take advantage of a second chance at life. As you know, on Speaking for Profit, we have conversations with speakers and consultants from around the world, but we really talk about speaking for profit a lot. And today we're going to talk about speaking for prophecy because it's so important that you continue to talk about your dreams, your motivations in life, and continue to live it out right. And the person that's our guest for today, Mark, is the key to life and has just an amazing story. We got to talk a few weeks ago, and I was just honored to hear some of it, and I wanted to bring it to the community. So, Mark, welcome to the Speaking for Profit podcast. I'm so excited you're here.
Well, good morning, Evolve, and thank you for having me here this morning.
No problem, no problem. And for folks who don't know, this is like a Friday morning. Mark done got up early for us. So make sure that y'all go on and like that like button. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so you can get more information just like this. So Mark, tell us a little bit about you. I always like to start off with this question. Where are you from and what brings you joy?
I'm from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and what brings me joy is helping people and just loving on my family and also doing my stonework.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So for you, New Mexico, so I recently went through New Mexico when I went on a road trip. So I went on a road trip from California to Atlanta. We went through New Mexico and it was so beautiful there. I had no idea. And we actually got there when the sun was setting. So we got to see like the mountains and, just the beautiful sky. So for you, how would you describe Santa Fe, New Mexico? Like, what is the landscape? What does it feel like for you?
Oh, it's a very magical place. Santa Fe translates in English to City of Holy Faith.
Wow.
And, the sunset. So if you caught a sunset here, you got a real treat. Some of the most beautiful sunsets anywhere. I fought for my life in two different states just to get back here so I could put footprints in this dirt again. This land is very important to me. A lot of who I am was because of how my family made me, and also how this place made me. And so, I've lived a lot of different places. I've lived in Southern California, Northern California, Phoenix, Denver, South Beach, New York. San Antonio. I've been around a few different places, but there's something about this land and these mountains around here that keeps me coming home. And I love to travel. I love to go places, but when I'm coming home and I see the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, it's like I could breathe again. I could, I'm okay. And it's just a very magical place for me.
Yeah, when we were there, I just felt just a very spiritual experience. Like I had so much gratitude for that sunset. The people there were very nice. We actually went to a steak restaurant and the food was like some of the best food we had on the road. So I want to go back because it was a surprise to me. I had never considered going to Mexico. I actually have a cousin who lives there, who moved from Los Angeles, who grew up in LA. And I remember when he was talking about moving back to LA, he was like, it's just, I'm so peaceful here. I don't know if I really want to leave the peace because LA can be, a little bit of the up and down when it comes to the way that it feels. So I'm happy you're from such a peaceful place. And that makes sense because of the energy that you have. So let's talk a little bit about your work, right? You're a stonemason, which I didn't even know what that was until I met you, Mark. So can you tell the audience a little bit about what is a stonemason? What do you do? And how did you get into this particular work?
Well, stonemasonry is we build walls. I do floors. I've done a lot of fireplaces. Anything basically with stone. Done a fireplace that was 45 feet high, all stone. I've done some 20-foot pillars, and so the only thing I don't do is like marble and granite countertops. But it's mostly structural building. I don't do like carving or anything of that nature. I
Are
started
there
doing.
other folks who do that, like stonemasons? Would they
Oh,
be considered for that work? Okay.
yeah. There's quite a few good ones around here actually. Stonework is very popular in Santa Fe, and there's, like I said, there's some legendary folks in the game that come from Santa Fe. And so I started when I was 17. I graduated high school. I was about to leave the house looking for a job, and a good friend of mine, he came by my dad's house. Him and my brother, they were going to fill up their water jug, and they said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to go look for a job." And my friend Joe Gentry, he said, "You just found one. Come with us." And I said, "What are you guys doing?" And he says, "We're doing flagstone." And I never heard of flagstone. And I said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "It's flat rock, and we make sidewalks out of it." And I thought he was lying. I honestly thought he was lying to me and trying to like play a joke on me. And the only reason I went is because I thought he was lying. And I'm so glad that I did, because it opened up a whole new world for me. And throughout, I played college basketball as well. And so throughout my breaks, that's how I would train, is with the rocks. And the other guys would be in the weight room, and they'd do a set and then rest for 5 minutes and flex in the mirror and all that stuff. But I was out here on the rock pile and in the mountains gathering stone. And so that was really my edge, strengthening myself that way. I mean, I was 5'10", 165, but when I ran into the big guys, they knew who I was, because I was
You were strong. Yeah, you had that strength. Yeah, that power. What position did you play in college, and what college did you go to?
I was a point guard, and then I played a couple years in California. 1 year in Southern California at a small college. I did not like the way they were. They dealt with me after an injury, so I left and I went up to a school in Northern California called Cañada College, and I really enjoyed it there. But then my coach left, so I came home and I finished out my last 2 years at a Division II school called New Mexico Highlands University, and it was a bit of a reverse culture shock, because, well, when I first went there, Santa Fe is a small town, and then I went to Newport Beach, Costa Mesa, and
Mm.
so it was quite a difference. It was a lot of culture shock for me. And then I went up to Northern California, up in Redwood City, just north of Palo Alto, and I loved California. I really did. But then I came back home, and Las Vegas is smaller than Santa Fe. And it was
Wow.
like one extreme back to the other. But the journey was awesome, and I was able to come home so my mother and father would be able to see me play college basketball. And my
I'm
father,
sure that had to be cool, right? Because I remember you telling me your father was a coach, right?
he was a coach, a Hall of Fame coach here in New Mexico for 30 years. And there was no way they'd be able to see me if I stayed out in California. I had plenty of offers up in Northern California to go to a 4-year school, but I knew that there was no way they'd ever be able to see me play. So that was the main reason why I came home. My family's very important to me. There's 9 of us, 9 children in our family, and 7 of the 9 of us played college basketball. And so you can imagine the competitions in that household. Even,
Yes.
even for dinner.
Shouts out to your parents, Mark, because they had to feed all of y'all athletes, and I know that that bill was not cheap, right? Keeping y'all, I
Oh,
mean, you out here training, and you got the stone masonry, and you doing all that and getting strong, and you got, I mean, you got to eat, you got to take care of yourself. So when you found out that this was a job, right? Like 17, then you're going back and forth to college, and you're getting stronger. When did you pivot to say this is gonna be what I do full time? Like when did that happen in your journey?
well, when I left college, I messed around in the movies and doing some modeling for a couple of years. And
Oh,
had
so
a
you
lot
was
of
in
fun.
Hollywood? You was in
I
Hollywood for a
wasn't,
little bit?
I didn't make it to Hollywood, but there was some productions out here in Santa Fe, and
Okay, nice.
also in I lived in Tucson, Arizona for a while. I did some work out there, and also in South Beach, Miami. I moved out there with an agent, and I really loved it out there. But some unfortunate circumstances took place that I had to come home. Uh, Actually, I was babysitting my agent's kids, and somebody broke in, and I ended up doing my thing on them and sent them to the hospital. Well, in the course of all that, I ended up breaking up a burglary ring, and they came after me like about 4 days later.
Oh, wow.
And they were chasing me down on the streets of South Beach because they weren't intending on this thing going to trial. So they were trying to take care of the one person that messed up their thing. And so, I hit a bus for 4 days and came back home. And that was tough for me, but I just regrouped, and it's been, that's kind of the story of my life is regrouping and retooling myself, and then going for something else. And so I came home because I didn't have no family in Florida, and I just didn't feel like I was going to be protected. And so I did what I had to do. And then I did some more work out in Arizona. And then after a long talk with my grandfather, he just told me, he said, son, don't be afraid to work hard. It builds character. And you're never going to build a family on your Hollywood dreams. And,
Mhm.
and at that time, when I found out I was going to be a father. And so that's when I decided to take up stonework full time, and made a career out of it. For me, it was never really work. I mean, I loved it. I was a natural for it. I mean, I really feel like I was made for stonemasonry. Early on, when I was young, even when I first started, the masons would get mad at me because I would tell them, try that rock over there. And they'd say, get out of here, laborer, go clean something, go mix some cement. And then I'd come back, and the rock I told them to try, it would be in there. So they all knew that I was going to come up in the game. Like, it didn't take me that long to become a mason. I didn't like laboring because it was pretty tough, and I wanted to be more creative. So
What's the path of becoming a stonemason? Like, do you have to go to school? Is there a certificate you have to get? Is it more
no,
about the amount of hours that you do the work, or you just kind of name
I
yourself?
I didn't go through any of that. I'm sure there's a lot of guys that do, that have to go through an apprenticeship, but I just got hired on as a laborer, and they saw my natural skills, and they put a hammer chisel in my hand, and I took it from there. And a lot of the stuff that I learned was like me sneaking peeks at guys working because they wouldn't teach me for whatever
Mhm.
reason. I think they knew that maybe they were looking in their rearview mirror a little too long, and they saw me coming. And so they didn't really aid me in my education of stonework. And so a lot of it was self-taught, or like I said, watching people out of the corner of my eye do stuff while they didn't think I was watching. And and then at a very young age, I just branched out on my own. I knew that I had what it took to go out and work on my own and start taking on projects on my own. And so I did that very early on. I was in my early 20s. I think I was like 24 when I decided to go on my own. And
Wow. So you jumped right into entrepreneurship. You said, I love this. This is gonna be my business. I'm gonna make it happen. Tell
I
me
just,
about like maybe two really cool projects that you've done that you want to share with the audience that were just like,
uh,
either a learning curve or something that you're just really proud of. I know you mentioned the fireplace, but are there any other projects that you've done where you're like, wow, I can't believe I did that?
well, yeah, the fireplace was one of them, 45 feet high. I mean, when I finished that thing off, I had to finish it off without scaffolding because we couldn't set up any more scaffolding. So when I was standing on the top and we finished it off, I'm looking, and the birds are flying lower than me. And I was like, yeah, I better get down from here. So when I was done with that, I was very, very happy about that one. And then a couple years ago, I got the opportunity to work on the addition at the National Cemetery here in Santa Fe. And I have family who are in that cemetery. I have a lot of friends who are in that cemetery and who will be. And so for me, it was a real honor to be able to take my skills there. And this was already after my second double lung transplant. So um, it was quite a big deal for me. And then last summer, I did a project in a community. It's a golfing community outside of Santa Fe called Las Campanas. And I had built a lot of my name and my reputation out in that area. I started out there a long time ago as a young stonemason, and it was just great how within the full circle that I was making in my return to stonework, that I was able to return to Las Campanas, and I did a new sign over at the clubhouse, and I was recognized for that by the community there. And there was actually a gentleman who makes movies named Conrad Hool, and he made a transplant movie called Two Hearts, and he was doing a showing there. And I had to give credit to my wife, Sandra, because she was talking to her boss and they were saying, well, we're looking for a stonemason to do this new sign out front. She says, well, I know a guy.
I know a guy.
Yeah.
She's so modest. Like, yeah, my husband can do it. I love it. I love it.
She told him about me, and she's the event manager there. So Mr. Hool came to her and wanted to do a showing of Two Hearts. And she had mentioned that we had seen the movie and that we lived that life. And so he asked her, how so? So she said, my husband has had 2 double lung transplants. And he was like really shocked about that. But then she added, he's the stonemason that's actually responsible for our new sign out front. And so he invited me to the showing, and I was able to, they asked, I stood up, and when they recognized me, I stood up and thanked him for having the courage to make the movie, and how it helped me and a lot of my transplant brothers and sisters see things from a different perspective, because mostly we had just been looking at it through our eyes, and the story is told through the eyes of the donor, and it shows about his parents, and so it really helped a lot of us out in regards to that. And so that was real special for me that I was able to attend that and just be recognized for being the mason responsible for that. And it was like I said, I was making a full circle, and then within that, I was able to make another one with that community. And there's a good chance that that might lead to even more once my book comes out, and that's early July.
Okay, definitely. So I know you mentioned about the double lung transplant, right? And I want you to talk a little bit about, when did you figure out like that something was going on with your lung? Like, and you've done this twice, right? You've had to do this twice in your journey. So take me through the first time, and then maybe even the second time
Well,
you went through that, because it's very rare. Number one, I don't know if folks know this that are listening or watching, but it's very rare for people, number one, to make it through it once, let alone make it through it twice, and to still be able to do something around physical labor afterwards. So you are what they say a godsend, right? Like, this is a very, very rare moment. So yeah, like, take us through the process of that, because I think there might be other folks who are on that donor list or who are having this experience who need some hope, Mark, right? And they really need to hear that from you.
Well, in September of 2010, I started coughing, and it was odd because it wasn't really flu or cold season. And then it was a different sounding cough, one that I referred to as a cemetery cough. Because most guys that start coughing like that, that's where we end up. And then towards the end of the month, I started getting dizzy spells. I'd be carving a stone on one knee, and then I'd stand up and I'd get real dizzy. And then one Saturday morning, early October, it was October 14th, actually, 2010, I woke up and I felt horrible. I couldn't breathe. And so I decided to go into the ER. And I thought at worst I had the flu, maybe pneumonia. But I was there 30 minutes and they were already admitting me. By the time when I walked in, my oxygen was at 66. And so they sent me for an x-ray right away because I was already at risk for cardiac arrest. Anytime you're your oxygen is that low, you could go into cardiac arrest any moment. Well, they saw the x-ray and my right lung was gone. It was not even operating. And that's the big lung. And the left lung is smaller because your heart's on that side. There was only a small, I'll show you here. Like, oh, I got my lung t-shirt on too. You see that?
Yep, that's really cool.
There was only a small portion up top that was working 8%. So I didn't even understand how I was still working. The day before I was working on a fireplace.
Wow.
I was on a fireplace and I was 8% lung function. And so at first they thought I had tuberculosis. So they put me in an isolation room, and it was really freaky because everybody had to be covered head to toe that came in. And I was pretty scared. I'll be honest with you. There's not a lot that scares me, but that was one of the times in my life where I was really scared. And after 3 days, they got the test back, and they said it wasn't tuberculosis, and they moved me to a regular room. But they did determine that my lungs were gone, and the only thing that would save me is a double lung transplant. And I just remember the doctor's eyes when he was telling me. They were just filled with doubt. Like, he said, the only thing that will save you is a double lung transplant, and you're probably not going to make it that long because it's a lengthy process. And then after he left, my mom and dad came in, and my dad asked me, was the doctor here? I said, yeah. And I was like, I don't know. I was not in a good place. And my dad said, well, what did he say? And I kind of snapped at him, which was out of character because my dad he was a big man. He was a strict disciplinarian, and you just didn't talk to him like that. And he said, I'm dying, Dad. And he just looked at me, and he kind of like calmed himself. And then he gave me the best advice that anyone's ever given me in my life. And he said, he just looked me dead in my eye, and he said, well, you better make up your mind. Either you get busy fighting or you get busy quitting. And I'm going to remind you, son, that I didn't raise any quitters. So it looks like you have some thinking to do, and it looks like you got to make up your mind. And then my mom said right after that, she said, you just got to give it up to God, son. We could sit here and pray with you, but right now, God's really the only one that can help you, the kind of help you need. You got to give it all up to God and let him deal with it, because he knows better than we do what to do with our own stuff. And so when they left, I had my come to Jesus meeting, and I just decided that I was never going to quit. I didn't know how long it was going to last on this journey or this fight, but I vowed that I would never quit. And almost a year to the day I went into the hospital, they called me. They called me on October 10th.
Wow. So you survived a whole year after that, after they said.
I was actually in pulmonary rehab when they called me. I was in the pulmonary rehab gym at the local hospital. And
Were you able to work during that time, Mark, or you had to take a
I
break?
was done. They told me, you never do this again.
Mm.
And I mean, I couldn't even, for a while, I couldn't even go outside and breathe the outside air. I was on oxygen full time, and my body atrophied really bad. I lost all my weight and all my muscle. And then when I started pulmonary rehab, it was a very, I don't even know how to describe it. If it was sad, if it was like a reality check, but I was at my weakest points in my life. And I just kept working. I just kept fighting. And finally got the call on October 10th. And I flew to Denver and got the transplant. And I walked out of the hospital in 8 days without oxygen, just a mask. And that was it. And I was good for about 3.5 years. And then I was working at a local high school, and I was coaching, and I had a position in the school. And I was running a little late, and I was sitting on the bed, tying my shoes, and I stood up too fast. And I just got real dizzy, and I lost my vision and then my hearing, and then I passed out, and I fell against the dresser. Well, the handle from the drawer hit me right in between the ribs, like a perfect shot, and it caused me to get a pulmonary embolism. And it wasn't very long after that, like 3 days, and I noticed something was really wrong. And so I contacted the transplant center and checked into the hospital, and that's when they told me I was in chronic rejection.
Wow.
And
Is that common when you get a
yeah, it's common, but they never told me about this pulmonary embolism. They just said you're in chronic rejection. There's nothing we can do for you. You have 2 months to live. And that was September of 2015. So God has a way of making 2 months look really long time. Like, and, uh, and so I remember when they told me this, I looked at them and I just told them, I said, which one of you did God call? And he said, what? Like, it kind of confused. What? And so I said it again. Which one of you did God call? And they're like, come on, Mark, you can't be in denial. This is really happening. And I said, nobody knows it better than me. Every time I breathe, I feel my life leaving my body more and more with each breath. I'm not in denial. But if God didn't call you, he didn't call me. And so I'm just going to stick to what I'm doing. And that's fighting. With God and Jesus as my team leaders. And it sounds like you guys are ready to check out of this fight. So check out. Like,
you're like, I got my team. You can go on over here.
So, at that time, I believed him. I believed that that I was dying, but I just was trying to make it 2 months in one day. So I could tell him, see, you were wrong. You don't. And I just told him, I said, if God didn't call you and tell you I had 2 months, well, he didn't call me. So yours is just an opinion, albeit a professional opinion, but opinion nonetheless. And I jumped in my Cherokee and I drove home to come and die. And then at 3 months, I got a phone call from St. Joe's Hospital in Phoenix, Arizona.
So you did make it past the 2 months. That's what you're telling me.
I did. And they got a call from somebody, another doctor, asking them if they could help me. So they agreed to give me an evaluation. And they said, well, how soon can you be here? And I was like, is tomorrow too soon? So the next morning, we jumped in the car, drove to Phoenix, and I got to the hospital. They checked me in, and I had to stay in the hospital for 2 weeks because I was so weak. I had to be an inpatient thing. And the evaluation, they basically put you through the ringer in every part of your body, every system, even your mind. They even check out your mind, see if you're capable of doing this thing. And so after 2 weeks, they said that they could help me, that they would help me, but I had to live in Phoenix. And that if I came home to Santa Fe, they weren't interested in helping me. And so I had to make a big decision. It was around Christmas time. And I really thought that this was going to be the last Christmas with my daughter. And so that was real tough for me. But she ended up coming out to Phoenix for Christmas. And then I finally got on the list on January 19th. So that month that I got out of the hospital December 19th. And I was listed on January 19th. But that month, was, they take one day at a time, but it turned to like, excuse me. It turned to one sunrise at a time, one sunset at a time, and then eventually 1 hour at a time. And I just kept fighting because about 2 years into my first transplant, my father passed away. And I just had it in my mind that the next time I saw my dad, I didn't want him to ask me, why did you quit? I never taught you that. And so I just kept fighting. I kept fighting for my daughter. And I was on the list for 4 days and they called me.
Wow. That's a quick turnaround, right? Because sometimes people can be on a list, like you said, the first time you're on there for at least a year.
Well, the first time I was on for a couple months. I didn't get listed until August, but I did have to wait a whole year. I didn't know it at the time, but I was actually in the last hour of my life. There was an instance where I felt like my body was floating away, and I just white knuckled the covers and the sheets and everything, and I was just hanging on because I didn't know what was going on. And then a couple minutes later, it happened again, and then my daughter noticed, and she called my mom in the room, and my mom said, "Well, why don't you eat something? You haven't eaten all day." And that would have been my last day had they not called me, because when I woke up in the morning, I struggled to the restroom and I almost fell. And then my mom came in and she tried to give me some fruit, and I ate a piece of watermelon, a piece of cantaloupe, and I felt like I was breathing like I ran 5 miles. I mean, I didn't get out of bed the rest of the day. And this was about 8:30 at night when this started happening. So then, as good moms do, they feed you and then they pray for you. Yeah.
Mhm.
So she brought me some food, and I said my prayers, and I put the spoon into the bowl, and I was literally right here, and the phone rang. I mean, I was ready to open my mouth and put the spoon in, and the phone rang, and they said, "Get to the hospital. We have your lungs." And then the first thing they said was, "When was the last time you ate?" And I said, "I haven't eaten all day, but I was about to." And they're like, "Did you eat anything?" And I said, "No." And so if I would have took that spoonful of food, they wouldn't have been able to do it, and that would have been it for me.
Wow.
And so when I got there, I told the doctor about this sensation, this feeling that I was having, and he he said, "Well, that's not your body floating away. You're in the last hour of your life. That's your soul leaving your body." And so I said, "Well, doc, I'm ready if you are. Let's do this." And he told me, "Mark, I have to tell you this." He said, "We're gonna fight for you with everything we got, but it doesn't look good that you're gonna make it through this." And I said, I already know all that, doc. All I had to hear you say was you're gonna fight with me, fight for me with everything you got. And then this feeling came over me, and I said, "But if someone else has a better chance with these lungs, give them to them, because I've had my extra time and I want someone else to have theirs." And I told him, and I know for a fact because I've been checking, and I know exactly where I'm saying this to you. Um, all my other organs are good, so I want you to take them and give as many people as you can extra time. And he said, "You know what you're talking about, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. But this ain't living, doc. This this thing I'm doing right now ain't living. And if I can give someone the gift of life like I was given, then I'll be living through them more than what I'm doing right now. And at least my life will mean something." And he said, "Well, that's the thing, Mark. There's not another match in 500-mile radius."
Yep, these lungs are for you, Mark.
Yeah. Ding, ding. It's fight time. Let's go. And so it seemed like 5 minutes later, but actually it was like 9 days later that I woke up out of the coma. And actually, I died on the table,
Wow.
my second surgery, and I left this place, and I basically got a ringside seat to the battle for my soul.
Mm.
And the last thing I remember was Jesus, my dad, my first donor, Michelle Stella, and my first mentor, Jaime Munoz. They were all holding hands around my bed, and they all
Wow.
looked down at me and then went like this. And then he looked again and did it again. And I took that as a message, like, you're not supposed to be here. It's not your time. You have to go. It was a rough recovery. I was in the hospital for almost a month. And I required 4 other surgeries besides the transplant. It was extremely tough, to say the least.
But you
And
did it,
I
Mark.
finally got out. And, through all that, I try not to get too much into that, but it's hard not to. And I try to talk more about what I've done with it after. And in 2020, I went back to stonework. I was in a very dark place in my life, and I was lost. And it's hard to live after you've died.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard to find your place, find your purpose. And so I decided to go back to stonemasonry after a long talk with a good buddy of mine that, like a week after this talk, he passed away in a motorcycle accident. And so I just decided this conversation is not going to be in vain. And so I decided to go back. It's one of the best moves I made. I mean, it was so hard in the beginning, but like now, you know, I'm happy again. I
Yeah.
know what I'm doing. people say, "Are you crazy, Mark? Why would you go back to what almost killed you?" And I just tell them, like, God wanted me somewhere else, he'd have me somewhere else. But he
Mhm.
has me right here. And he's using me to show people like what's possible. He's using me to
Exactly.
show people like you don't have to be scared. Take the precautions and do what you got to do, but you don't have to be scared. And he took my impossible and turned it into I'm possible. And my wife is the one that actually put the seed in my head that my new career was going to be public speaking and motivational speaking. I'm like, come on, you're talking crazy. That's not me. She says, but you've done it. And she was actually with me when I got invited to speak at a respiratory therapist conference, a statewide conference in New Mexico. And there was like 250 respiratory therapists in the room. And they gave me an hour. And I didn't even prepare. I just went in there off the cuff and just talking.
But the thing is, Mark, you're an amazing storyteller and you have a story to tell, right? So I find that our voices will find the audience, right? And I feel like that's a spiritual experience as well. Our voices will find the audiences that we're meant to impact.
And
So you already had it.
she put that in my head. And then when I started Stonework, it was just for myself, right? It was for me. But then I started seeing the effect it was having on others. And that's kind of what led me to looking for a mentor to get some education about this thing, to do it on the real. And that's what led me to Les Brown.
Mhm.
And so I liked him because he references God and he references some Bible verses and
He's a really good speaker too. I mean, Les
yeah,
is a
and he
very
has some
powerful speaker.
similar struggles as well. He had a
Mhm.
bout with cancer and he beat that. And so there was a lot of parallels there for me to draw from. And then that led me to some other people. And so I'm very excited. And actually, I just got some news this week that I'm gonna head on down to Dallas, 23rd and 24th of this month, and I'll be taking part in season 5 of Speak Up on Prime Video.
Nice. Congratulations. Thank you for sharing that with us.
And I picked up a speaking gig September 16th at a faith and family event near Santa Fe, and it's actually a paid gig, so I'm happy about that. I
Yes, get
do,
them money.
I
Speaking for
do whatever.
profit.
I do whatever I can at small stuff. I have one tomorrow morning for 60 men at a church here in Santa Fe. It's a men's breakfast. And I just took part yesterday in a virtual summit. I had a
Mhm.
20-minute spot.
Yep.
Um,
You here today doing this podcast? Like
yeah.
you
So
just out here killing it, Mark.
kinda,
What I appreciate about what you're doing right now is you're not living your life in vain, right? And you could just be doing stonework. Like let's just be honest. That could be just your thing, you just happy. But you're taking your life as an example and sharing your story. And that's just so impactful. So before we go, because we do got to wrap up, because you got a meeting, I got a meeting. We got things to do. I want the audience to know we love y'all, but we got some movement happening. You got a book coming out. So tell us a little bit about the book and how folks can connect with you so they can make sure that they are there when it drops and are able to purchase it.
well, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm known as the lung transplant stonemason. Uh, I got a logo coming out. It's pretty cool. It's a silhouette of me with a chisel in one hand and the hammer coming back like this and pink lungs. And so that's how I'm known as the lung transplant stonemason, the only one ever to do it. And it my message is just you have to believe in yourself beyond measure. Even if you're the only one that matters.
Mm.
And you can accomplish these kind of things, but you have to eliminate the self-sabotage that we're all guilty of operating in. And until we do that, we can't move forward in power and positivity. Because if we're beating ourselves up with our own thoughts and our own words, we're lowering our vibration. And that's just makes it impossible for us to, like I said, move forward in power and have an effect. I use my story to show other people that we all have a version of the unheard of. But we can all tell it loud and clear, but it's very important that we get rid of these things that hurt us, that hold us back. And one of them is letting our fears and doubts grow into monsters, or feeding them and then being surprised when they become monsters. So with me, I just starve mine. They don't get nothing. They don't get the scraps. They don't get a crumb. They don't get a whiff, a sniff. If I'm talking about what I'm cooking, they don't even get to listen. I have to starve them.
They don't know what's on the menu, right? They don't even know what's on the menu.
Gotta kill them, because if not, they're gonna kill my dreams, my goals, my aspirations, and then eventually me. And that's important for everybody to know that, and not doubt yourself. There'll literally be thousands of people in your life that will doubt you. Don't ever become one of them, ever. And that's important, that you have to believe in yourself, because when you believe in that you can accomplish something, if you truly believe it in your heart and in your mind, you've already won more than half the battle. See, the actual physical act of it, that's the easy part. That's just the body following orders or being obedient. And so a lot of it is right here and right here. And once you get it there, then, you know, they say the sky's the limit, but it's not just a saying. It really can be that. But you have to believe it. And believing is everything. And when everybody wrote me off, and even the doctors that were fighting for me, they didn't think that I was going to make it. They didn't believe I was going to make it. They fought hard for me, and I'll always be thankful for them. St. Joe's is an incredible place. I don't talk much about the place in Colorado, because all I ever refer to them is the quitters in Colorado. They quit on me. They quit on my life. And you can't ever quit on yourself, and you can't ever stop believing in yourself. And when you do those things, you will be empowered beyond measure. You will do things that it will even surprise yourself. And that's just a message that I try to bring to everybody.
Yes, that's so powerful, Mark. Thank you, y'all. If you are listening to this podcast and you have not taken a gym, I don't know what you've been doing the last 30 to 40 minutes. I don't know what you've been doing with your life, right? Because I learned so much about you, Mark, but I learned so much about myself. And you've given me tools that I know are going to help me fight some of the monsters I'm fighting right now. So I'm just so appreciative of you. I'm so thankful for you to come through to the podcast, giving us your time, giving us your energy. And what we'll do is we'll put your information in the show notes. So if anyone needs it, they can go on and grab it. When your book drops, let us know. We'll go on and share it with the community. But just thank you so much for being here, for being present, and for being willing to not only speak for profit, right, make money, but speak for prophecy, speak for your dreams, and to tell your story. So thank you.
The last thing I want to say is, don't ever use the tools of the weak. That's making excuses, complaining, wallowing in self-pity, and blaming others. When you do those things, you will be assured that you will definitely weaken yourself, and you won't make it to where you want to be.
And that's a good closing, Mark. Well, thank you so much for being here. And until next time, y'all.
Thank you.
Peace.
Peace.